everybody. This is called To Burn in Memory. It's like a narrative-based, I think mystery investigative thing. It says here, To Burn in Memory, an ahistorical and atemporal interactive fiction work. Explore a city that never existed and uncover its secret history through the memories of a woman that lived its darkest moments. Mild content warning for violence and war. Uh-oh. That can't be good. No, there's going to be a lot of reading, so let's go ahead and enter, see what this is all about. Oh, loud. Breathtaking, isn't it? Says Salantri, gesturing out over the vista. Here is the city as I saw it, empty, painted in rust and gold, below tormented skies, writhing in cruel fire. She continues in a tone somewhere between opera and pantomime. Symbolic? A brief expression of sadness, then she continues, or perhaps the romanticist in me cannot stomach to tell this tale without an image such as this. I gave my life to this place, she says with a sigh, and now I offer it to you, my tale as seen through many eyes, but your judgment must be yours alone. I shall play the part of Cicerone after my fashion, but not in a manner you expect, for I will be beside you only in memory. This should suffice to guide you through this tale to its end, and my absence will grant you clear eyes to draw of this the conclusions you will. Find me then in the orchards. Balcony, Institute, below tower. A balcony facing westward to the fore of a rooftop terrace overlooking the city. Twin streams fed by long aqueducts flank the tower in an embrace, then split again in symmetry to fall in two over the facades of the structure. Behind, paved pathways connected the cardinal points of the circular structure, and at their intersection rose a delicate white tower, starkly contrasting the silhouetted black spires of the horizon. Arcades accentuated the circumference of the terrace as the sun fell on the water like a scar. Follow pathways below the tower. Landing overlook. The wind whistled through the arcades, a low and mournful hum. At the opposite side of the tower I could fully behold the western vista, a river stretching out to the horizon, the opposing shore veiled and blurred in fog, receiving long shadows cast from the tower. Radiating outward from the tower were the roaring falls, glittering in the half-light. They split the circular piazza into two tiers, that lower tier accessible from here by twin descending staircases that curved inward to embrace a small landing. Though blackened windows teased entrance, the tower itself allowed me no means of ingress at this level. Let's descend the stairs. The landing. The stairways flattened out and continued, splitting the flow in two to descend towards the outer arcades and the red river. The entrance to the white tower was here, and dark in the shadow of the waning sun, a black monolith of a door, seamless and with no visible means of admission. On closer inspection, a tight seam outlined a smaller inset door, featureless except for an ornate handle intricately decorated with a solar motif. It was unlocked. The atrium took up the entirety of the first two floors of the tower. Hugging stately wooden paneling, a spiral staircase swept upwards. Heavy, dust-filled beams of light shone through long vertical windows to fall on a sea of charred remains, the curled cinders of countless books. Two doors opposed each other, the black-painted monolith of a door leading back to the terrace, and a smaller set built of wood and brass inlay open to the remains of a once great hallway. Let's sift. Ooh, pages. I waded through the ash, hand-sifting charred fragments of history, names, dates, time, and place, now meaningless in their separation. I tore through page after page, drunk on the prospect of discovery, and there it was, a single page, unburnt, alone in a ray of the setting sun. A rose, red. It held in perfect detail an illustration of a 7-petaled rose. Let's go, I say, into the hallway. Through the shattered remains of glass panels held aloft by ribs of steel, the waning sun filled the atrium with diffused light in tones of blood and gold, a fitting welcome to the devastation below. Tattered and smoke-blackened banners flew from the ironwork buttresses. countenance cast in vivid red under those stains wrought of battle, surviving with that stoic dignity of a final stand. Charred furniture stood as makeshift barricades under layers of cinder and, catching the light, thick shards of broken glass. Let's examine the Grand Gate. The Institute's entrance gate was a masterwork in brass, elegance and strength in equal temperance, gold hue belying the fortitude of a stronger metal, shut tight. Okay, so... The atrium took up the oh, I already read this. Into the atrium to ascend the staircase. The library was cylindrical in structure, occupying in full the 7th to 11th floors of the tower. The first of these constituted a reading area and balcony, followed by 3 floors of mezzanine. The spiral staircase landed on the reading level below the filigree flow of iron buttress and girder that held up the first mezzanine. All this grand structure forsook its purpose, however, as every shelf now held little more than a thin film of dust, their intended contents lying as ashes far below. Centered in emphasis by the form of the library lay a statue with the features of a 3-headed raven, gazing with mournful eyes out over the river, long shadows cast before its stare. The tower casts its shadow over the river to touch the fog-shrouded shore. A small device sits precariously on the stone balustrade. An elegant clockwork device the size of a pocket watch, closed with a latch relief, depicting a snake devouring its own tail. Ooh, Ouroboros. An elegant clockwork okay, so we read that part. Centered within the interface of the device, a cold brass sigil sat above a complex clockwork mechanism. Seemingly activated by the opening of the device, a needle began to protrude from below the sigil in a short and abrupt whir of clockwork. Place finger on protrusion? Why, yes. It's gonna kill me. Its hunger sated, the sigil faded in luminance to that of a low flame's dull glow. It's mine now. Okay, let's return to the landing. Ascend the staircase. The 11th floor consisted of a small hallway acting as a landing and final floor for the spiral staircase. Windowless and unlit, but for faint light seeping in through the frame of the large door, taking up the opposite end of the room. Flanking it were the vague shapes of statues, their forms illegible in the dark. So I guess we can go back down. Oh. Activate memory? Yeah. We gave them an ultimatum. To spill our blood is to put your word to the fire. There is a special place in the contempt of history for we book burners, but I say that yours is a cold-hearted history indeed, to weigh ink above we living, breathing men and women. In this our siege turned to a weary occupation. The provost held his own in that loft palace of his, and we developed a begrudging respect for his admins. Maybe this immutably held deference to some grain of truth in that ideology of theirs. But all things have their terminants, and in our world, with its unsleeping machineries of whirring revolutions, the eternal now holds little truth. Like clockwork in their monotony, the state will respond to the portent of violence in kind, and on the 10th day of our occupation the 33rd showed their hand. The sight of the artillery cast a surreal pall over us, and we could not imagine their use. In this queer way they proved of little use and threat. Night falls now, and I fear all this ideology of violence will become far less speculative before it is over. So we already did this. We ascended, entered the atrium, returned to the terrace. I guess I already examined the door, so let's descend the stairway to the river. Flanked by architraved columns set into the stone walls holding back the streams, the staircase ended at the great river before a wide iron gateway leading to the quay. I could feel the falls, ever present, thunder behind thick stone. A brass gate barred the way down to the promenade. The Institute's entrance rear gate was no less a great work as its brother, that same elegance and strength, gold hue belying the fortitude of a strong metal, bright brass fashioned to call to mind the sun in all its radiance. Where do I go now? Activate memory, nice. Okay, so we already read this. So there's a memory here in this area. About here. They say that the first casualty of war is truth, but in this case the provost was the first to fall, hardly an avatar of sincerity. On realizing the consequences of his actions, the poor fool had rushed down to meet the 33rd with flailing arms in a futile attempt to demand they cease fire. Then, either through malice or indifference, the second barrage was launched, heedless of his cries. It's hard to feel pity for a man impaled by gold, and carnage that he himself had unleashed, but this was no victory. The battle, if you could call it that, slaughter being more apt, was over the moment the Imperial infantry breached our meager barricades and entered the tower. Each man or woman with a weapon, though they were few, was shot the moment of their surrender. They then lined us up before the walls, and we knew what was to come. It is here I stand in full acceptance of my fate, but the bullets never come. An officer enters the hall, and shouting a short phrase in German, followed up with a sly smile. He points directly at me. The soldiers fire their deafening volley, and each man before the wall falls, but for each woman not a shot lands. The officer returns and says to me in French, his tone terrifying in its calm demeanor, "We spared you for one reason alone, because your republic would not." That's scary. I stand in the livery of the nation of my birth, wearing my true face before those I have betrayed, to watch with clear eyes the end I have wrought for them. The order has been sent out, and now I wait for the thunder that will signal the last lines of this final act. A moment of silence below the tower, then the command to fire rings out across the empty square, to be drowned in turn under the 33rd's deafening barrage, and on impact the screams of metal and men alike. But this I can hear not. For me that dread song still played unmatched in volume and held in rapt attention my helpless mind. Firm and true stands the watch. Die walked on the Rhine. Calling to mind the triumphal arches of antiquity, that great arch of the Institute's entrance dominated its facade to a Palatine effect. Further strengthened in emphasis by the twin falls aside it, in darkness at this hour an underground reservoir received the falls to roar in eerie reverberation. Continuing the path downward, grand steps set in massive slabs began their long descent towards the heart of the plaza, interrupted rhythmically by landings set with small balconies. Ooh, another memory. The steps ended their straight descent with a small landing, that last stretch of vertical distance taken by an appropriately massive imperial staircase enveloping the central axis of the plaza in a crescent of stone. And you would burn all this down for what? The memorist shouts from above. To buy another few years for the condemned? We were by your hand condemned, I reply, and now you ask us why we should want for more? We could do nothing, I interrupt. Nothing is all you do, all you think about. Is that how you see the world, as nothing? Precisely, he replies. You say that. You say you possess nothing, want nothing, I continue breathless. A lie the size of the tower you stand before, I say. And of that tower I ask to put this lie to test. And that monster in stone and iron, truly nothing? Is it the same one? Okay, it is. Alright. Ascend to Apex. Okay, so I was just up there, okay. So we'll go to the pendulum. The black pendulum swings, a ripple of motion in calm waters, the city's beating heart of weighted steel. Below it, the tiles were decorated in the fashion of a sunwheel, centered so that the pendulum would act as its axis, jagged arms and black spun outwards, calling to mind lightning with their broken form. To the west, two wide boulevards split the city before the sun, twin arteries that flowed red with light. Stately, grand, and decorative, but only up to a point, dominated as they were by that great mass of the Institute looming opposite them, a many-tiered thing that rose in stone towards the tower. Imposing yet distant, still as adamant, yet in motion embodied as the falls thundering down beyond sight, fitting duality. Here an entrance led deep below the tower, embraced by the crescent steps that began the ascent in symmetry, again befit with a monolithic black door, mirroring in design the riverside entrance far above, another duality. That old anarchist Kropotkin says history is like a pendulum, a long night of slumber, then the day breaks in motion as we cast off our chains. Ever astute in his observation, but I confess that if he is right, then will we not be here again at this exact point, watching the same pendulum play to the same ever-unchanging rhythm? When the pendulum slows and the night nears, are we to be set in chains again? The pendulum was placed here at the heart of the city to remind us of us and instill in us this ideology of poverty and motion. I reject this, and say instead that to see history in cycles is to resign change to a pattern set long ago. In short, it is to remain still. Words, words, all words, action and motion, but here I sit and I write, and writing is merely the threat and dream of action. Let's examine the door. Again, an inspection revealed a seam outlying a smaller inset door, its features and lack thereof a mirror of its counterpart, but with the glaring exception of the handle, this time wrought to the theme of a crescent moon, locked. The Old Quarter intersection. An intersection of 3 streets marked the entrance of the Old Quarter. The old aqueduct lent its name to the district as it ran through here in a condition of painstaking and yet, as the centuries passed, ever more Sisyphean repair. In its shadow rose a grand 8-story building, grand and built by that unmistakable hand of commerce that draws all form towards the sensual, but still that ancient work of the aqueduct loomed over unheeding. Let's do that. Framed by ornate columns, the entrance opened up into a small reception area to be followed by a surprisingly narrow hallway. In a state of somewhat poor repair, the interior had the air of a place that saw constant low-level use, but little maintenance. Further down the hall lie entrances to the watchmaker's store and a place calling itself Lawrence 27. I want to go into the watchmaker's store. The door opened with a vivid chime into a cramped and dust-laden, though otherwise quite unremarkable store. Faint evening light filtered through the thin curtains onto 2 sealed glass display cases that made up the store's entire visible stock. To the back of the store, a door leading to the watchmaker's workshop lies ajar. I leaned close over the displays, examining every detail until my breath cast a haze on the glass. Whatever these were, they were not watches, and seemingly did not, at least in any conventional sense, tell time. The door to the rear opened into a surprisingly, after that tight space of the store, spacious workshop. Light from the tall window composing the short end of the rectangular room glinted off tools of the trade cluttering the desk below. It was here my eyes were drawn as I entered, and having taken a few seconds to process the strangeness of it all, I then took in the thousands of individual sheets of paper lining the walls, scrawled with impossibly intricate diagrams that seemed to swim as if under intense heat. Atop the desk lay a strange key. Ooh, the sun key. I like it. A dangerous and seemingly ceremonial thing, its handle fashioned with a wreath of tiny iron spears, hard to hold. I'm taking it. It's mine. Alright, let's leave. Exit to the hallway. Rear exit. The Institute and its grand staircase to the plaza and its pendulum, this created a long axis bisecting the city to form its spine. At the culmination of this lay the Iron Gardens, a sprawling complex of cast iron and plate glass greenhouses. Below, spires silhouetted in black across the horizon, it felt fierce in its myriad colors. Opposite the planter facade at the rear of the Lacombe building, a small forecourt led up to the garden's crystalline gate. This is a very interesting little read. I found a key. Look, I got a key. Yay, I'm good at this. The gate. Filigree metalwork of great craftsmanship joined in glass. Despite a fragile countenance, it was bolted from the inside with large steel bars. By all appearance, it did not seem to be operable from the exterior. Lacombe building. Framed by ornate columns, the entrance opened into a small reception area to be followed by a surprisingly narrow hallway. In a state of somewhat poor repair, the interior had the air of a place that saw... Oh, I read this already. I guess we'll go to Lawrence. Ooh, another memory. A small brass plate set before the entrance announced its establishment as simply Lawrence 27. Inside, evening light was cast through large windows into polished wood to bathe the hall in warm tones, Giving the room an expansive feel, paintings and framed mirrors were embedded intermittently within the wall paneling. Sitting at tables and leaning at the bar, seemingly human figures melted and formed at the corners of my perception. If they had voices, only the hazy echo of their words could be heard. Words spoken but never formed. Eva Salandri, old money but sympathetic. She beckons me over. I know you see this as a confession, she says as we take our seats. But the provost, doesn't. Eva, I reply, trying a faint smile. I had just hoped that at least some small part of him would see us as more than that mad beast he makes us to be. She looks down at the table. After a pause, she waves over a waiter, and recognizing him, asks for the usual. The waiter looks over at me. Oh, I say, glancing over the menu without taking in a word, my mind elsewhere. The 18 and the 71, please. I do pray you take another look, madam, he replies. There's a reason it's Lorentz 27. 27, then? I reply with the first number that comes into my head. He leaves with a small bow. 18 and 71, of all the numbers to choose. A faintly puzzled look tells me the significance of this doesn't escape Salandra. I do hope you just got lost in your thoughts of your hero Garibaldi and his conquest in Italy, she jokes ineffectually, with an attempt at a smile. She shakes her head and continues our conversation where we left off before the waiter's interruption. If only, she sighs, this was really all just madness. Exit to hallway. Okay, let's return to the intersection. Guess to Latin Quarter. Let's do that. Along the eastern side of the boulevard, refitted stores had been split and partitioned to act as narrow townhouses. Names and numbers had long since faded from the facades, brass plate and chalk alike, but only one plaque read with perfect clarity, Salandra Residence, Lethe Avenue. An entrance identical in make to its likewise austere neighbors, but with glaring exception that here the brass nameplate was still legible, locked. The river bent to meet the northern quarter of the city, ending the boulevard in a promenade of sorts that continued some distance along the shore. Opulence and austerity were at war along the boulevard, with a Baroque sensibility gaining dominance as one moved closer to the river, culminating at the center of all this with the Imperial Opera, an imposing hulk of a structure brooding above the waters. The German Imperial Army's 21st Division was stationed here, occupying a commandeered high-class hotel overlooking the river. The Institute's proclivities had meant the Prussians had had their pick of the less austere establishments. Not that the Institute had much of a say in the matter, but this arrangement had worked quite well for both involved parties. The here elite could take their gilded spoils of war from the merchant princes and leave the Institute's less gaudy constructions to their original proprietors. The building's lobby was a decoratively involved work, brass gilding and tall windows to emphasize the view riverside. The German military had done little renovation aside from removing a wall here and there, taking advantage of the former hotel's large social spaces to house the majority of their operation. Access to the building proper was obtained through double doors to the rear, but strangely, these were immovable yet held no lock. All right. We are gonna go ahead and leave this here. So thank you for coming in and watching Things to Burn in Memory. It's very interesting, and it's actually very well written. I really like it. It sounds like a book I would read, and it seems to be taking place from the person that we're playing as is retelling the story. Or we're someone who's listening to the person retell the story. I'm not really sure. They seem to be reliving everything that happened. They went back to this now abandoned city and stuff that they obviously spent a lot of time in, and now they're kind of reliving all of these different memories, all the messed up stuff that happened, all the books that were burned, the Germans occupying their city and stuff like that, killing any sort of resistance. So it's very interesting. It's very well written. I like the art style, like in the background and stuff, you know, with the little like clock and stuff like that, the Ouroboros pocket watch. Very, very neat. This game is free to play on Steam, so if you guys want to check it out, go ahead. But thank you for coming in and listening to me read this. I really like it, and maybe I'll play some more later. But I love you guys. Bye!